The USA is the most powerful nation in the 21st century, and it has led the world since World War II. So, when something happens in the USA, the rest of the world follows. To begin the 21st century, one of the most important events occurred, and it's of course, you know it all, the tragedy of 9/11. On that day, four planes hit the Twin Towers and the Pentagon. The people responsible for this horror are Al Qaeda, who were led at the time by this man, Osama bin Laden. This man is very important for the rest of our story, but for now, let's stick to the 9/11. 19 terrorists hijacked four planes from all around America, and all of them were heading to the Twin Towers and the Pentagon. Three of those four planes reached their target, while in the fourth one, the passengers on board fought back, so the plane landed in a field near Shanksville. This event has caused the death of 3,000 people and an important crisis in America. In fact, on that day, the market fell 7.1%, and that was a big threat for the traders. However, some people are doubtful of the implication of the United States in that attack, because every experienced pilot said that at these speeds and heights, it's almost impossible to target such a small tower, especially compared to the open sky. The following video is an interview of a French pilot that is talking about the 9/11 event.
Pour jumelles, voilà, il y a l'attentat du 11 septembre avec les deux avions et tous les autres avions d'ailleurs qui sont détournés ce jour-là. T'étais déjà pilote?
Alors j'étais pilote et je pilotais à ce moment-là un des types d'avions qui est rentré, donc le Boeing 767 qui est rentré dans la tour. On a essayé de le refaire au simulateur pendant des heures et des heures et des heures. On n'a jamais réussi à prendre une tour.
C'est vrai?
Hein, jamais.
Pourquoi? C'est parce que c'est fallait être technique?
C'est parce que
They thought the planes were already programmed to hit the World Trade Center. You may ask yourself, why would they do that? Well, let's continue the story. All the terrorists were Arabs, and especially citizens from Saudi Arabia. And the leader of the terrorist group, Al Qaeda, is Saudi. From there on, a huge strike began to shut down the most researched man of the USA. And for that, the United States had to go out of their country to find him. So, let's take a tour around Afghanistan and the track of the leader of Al Qaeda, Osama bin Laden. The USA couldn't let this happen without doing anything. So, they decided to invade Afghanistan and to fight with Al Qaeda in order to kill their leader. This war started on the 7th of October 2001 and ended 2 decades later. The American troops were attacking on land and in the air, but the terrorist organization resisted. And with Al Qaeda came the Taliban, another terror group that fought with Al Qaeda and against the United States. But one day, the 2nd of May 2011, this happened.
Tonight, I can report to the American people and to the world that the United States has conducted an operation that killed Osama bin Laden, the leader of Al Qaeda, and a terrorist who's responsible for the murder of thousands of innocent men, women, and children. It was nearly 10 years ago that a bright September day was darkened by the worst attack on the American people in our history.
Since that day, America has begun a war with the Middle East, and it's still happening nowadays. The next war that we're going to talk about is the invasion of Iraq by the United States of America. The 28th of March 2003, the United States invaded Iraq to Baghdad, and that invasion lasted almost 1 month to supposedly disarm Iraq of weapon of mass destruction. But the violence with which they have invaded Iraq was disproportionate, especially that Iraq was not responsible for the 9/11. The USA was trying to find an excuse to invade at least one country in the Middle East, so 9/11 was their chance to do so. Saddam Hussein was a terrible dictator that was killing his people, so the US came like heroes to save the Iraqi people, and also to implement military bases in the Middle East to control terrorism, like they used to say. Now, let's fast forward to 2013 to talk about the Black Lives Matter movement. In fact, that movement was very important for the US history because it resumes a huge part of its life with the triangular trade that was performed between Africa, Europe, and America. America used to enslave black people to work for them. So, with the death of George W. Bush that was killed by a police officer, the movement was created to give more rights to black people, especially that they represent a huge part of the population. 10 years later, black people have obtained more rights. However, another war has begun in the Middle East that opposes Israel and Palestine, especially the Hamas. The 7th of October 2023, Hamas has done a terrible attack to Israel that have killed almost 1,000 Israelis. But Israel replied very heavily and continues to use heavy artillery to shoot at Palestinians and more recently Lebanese people, without doing distinction between civilians and terrorists. The US is concerned in that war because it and Israel are the two only countries to vote no for a ceasefire because they want to control the Middle East because they have the most oil in all of the world and the US really needs it. So, Israelis and the US continues war, one for gaining power and the other for self reason because Netanyahu, if he stops war, will be imprisoned for corruption and genocide.